SoundCartel.
From SoundCartel, I'm Nicole Goodman, and this is Business Essentials Daily. The shift to remote work appears to have benefited the workforce, but is it hindering innovation? Marnie Brokenshire, founder of leadership and performance consultancy Uncapped Potential, says productivity in Australia is at its lowest in decades, and spontaneous in-person interactions may be what's missing. She says businesses can move beyond rigid return-to-work mandates to create a culture of engagement, trust and high performance. Because, as Marnie tells Jeff Waters, working from home is having an impact on long-term growth.
I think what we're now starting to see is that remote work has been great for task efficiency, but the cracks in productivity and innovation are starting to show. The Productivity Commission recently reported that in the last 60 years, we've seen the lowest productivity growth in Australia. And in recent years, technology really hasn't been that sort of rocket booster everybody expected. When you haven't got businesses taking risk and using capital and technology, there starts to be a lag in gains and long-term growth. And long-term growth really requires businesses to adopt technology and innovation and new innovative ways of working. So the reorientation of work during the post-pandemic period to a more remote basis has, I think, had some impact in the decline in the investment in innovation because it's become quite transactional. So time-limited meetings that have become very task-focused. You know, what are you doing today? What are you doing tomorrow? Who's taking care of that? And then we finish the call and we move on to kind of the next task orientation. So the Productivity Commission's reports, aligned with some of the stuff that our clients are talking about in the decline in those sort of really material gains, are having an impact. So bringing people back into the office for many reasons helps to address the phrase that I term, which is the cost of disconnection. So for productivity upside and innovation, we need to start thinking about fewer routine tasks and more non-routine tasks. So we need leaders investing in upskilling and coaching and future skills focused for businesses to kind of shift back into that risk basis that will lead to the sort of innovation that puts Australian businesses on the map.
A lot of what we've heard about Australia's productivity issues at the moment, which, you know, are well known and fairly widespread, that our productivity is not what it should be. A lot of that is related to wage increases and recent wage increases as wages tend to catch up with inflation. But are you saying that we're lagging behind as well, and that innovation isn't happening simply because people aren't going to the office?
Absolutely. And I think that's because you have to make time for innovation. You have to create space for it. And a lot of some of the greatest ideas that give productivity gain and innovation upside comes from the spontaneous interactions that people would typically have when they're face-to-face in an environment that is allowing for and providing for that type of discussion versus just being transactional and task. So it's a key leadership thing. I coined the phrase, leadership is a contact sport, and it's very hard to develop the future talent and to inspire and motivate the type of thinking that leads to innovation and finding new innovative ways of work to be done when your interaction with your leader is intermittent, when your face-to-face contact is task-focused in a remote environment, and you are literally just constantly looking at the now, the immediacy of what's happening, what's in front of us right now. Generally, I also think that bringing people back into the office is healthier for people, healthier for societies, and then healthier for businesses as well. Because as humans, we are community-oriented and we need to be a part of something.
All right. So the problem, though, at the moment is that there's an awful lot of blowback against mandates for people being forced to come back into the office. What would you say to that? I mean, my staff will be annoyed with me if I make them come back into the office. How do I overcome that?
So I think organisationally, leaders, senior leaders, CEOs and leaders need to sit around the table and say, what is our cultural premise? You know, are we the mandate type? Employees will comply willingly with mandates when they understand the business context and when they feel part of the decision-making process. When issuing instructions from the mount cascaded poorly and people are told what to do, the natural reaction to that is going to push back.
Marnie, it sounds like you should get on the phone to Elon Musk as soon as possible. Sorry, please continue.
I don't know if that's a call I really want to take, but I understand the intent. If organisations are organically thinking about, you know, making a cultural shift in any way, shape or form, they should be thinking about it in the context of an inclusive approach and that one size does not fit all. So whenever I see commentary in the media or, you know, these brave and bold CEOs of the big banks coming out saying, right, there's a problem. We're not progressing. We're not meeting all of our objectives. We need people back in the office. You know, it's mandated. See you Monday. I bristle because I completely agree with the premise, but the execution is really flawed.
So what do I do instead?
So what you do instead is you have to have a very clear change management strategy, and that change management strategy has to have a very strong emphasis on communication, and the comms need to be individualised and contextualised. So, for example, if I'm the leader of the marketing and sales team, I might explain to my sales force that face-to-face collaboration is going to really strengthen our client relationships and our deal-making skills. So we're going to be able to drive consistency by problem solving collectively. We're going to be able to be more preemptive because we can learn from our shared experiences, and we need to get around a table and talk about that, not in a time-limited Teams meeting where we all firsthand understand how limiting dimensionally that conversation can be, but where we're actually really having free-flowing interactives. But then on the marketing side of the business, I might say to my marketing team, our face-to-face collaboration is going to foster the brainstorming. We're going to make space and for real-time ideas exchanging, and we need to do it on an interactive basis because it's more powerful when it's spontaneous, that it's not kind of scheduled, where we can kind of throw ideas around really collectively but bounce off each other's energy in the space, or draw people into the conversation who might otherwise be quiet because, you know, we're in a collective space that can promote a more constructive and diverse discussion. So I've just tailored why the change needs to happen to those specific audiences in a way that they're going to relate. So I think that's the first thing. And I'm having those conversations face to face. I'm not sending an email out, you know, I mean, frankly, email communication about really important topics like this is just lazy. And I often just don't understand, irrespective of the size of the workforce, there's always another way to execute that. And I think it's really important that in those conversations, leaders are differentiating flexibility from working in the office. You know, what's really interesting, Jeff, is that a lot of the big corporates that I work with now that have very high performing cultures, they're not talking about this issue. It's not a problem for them because they have really high trust basis in their culture. There's a lot of autonomy for people to act, and they're measuring output, not presenteeism. So in the context of that, people have the flexibility they need to have the balance they need to have to get everything done. It's not a core area of focus. Where we see, I think, the blowback comes from organisations that have failed to establish that level of trust. They're not inclusive in their decision-making and tailoring the solution, and their comms are just poor, just not contextualised or individualised.
That's Marnie Brokenshire, founder of Uncapped Potential. This episode of Business Essentials Daily is produced by the team at SoundCartel. Thanks for listening. I'm Nicole Goodman. We'll bring you more Be Daily tomorrow. Follow at BE Daily Podcast across social media and head to bedaily.com.au for more from the Business Essentials Daily podcast. SoundCartel.